Welcome to the Polish Museum of America. Let me entertain you. You may wonder what a theater stage, what a proscenium is doing in a museum. I have to remind you that the museum is a guest at the headquarters of the Polish Roman Catholic Union. If you look up into the arch, in the center there, you see the initials, Zjednoczenie Polsko-Rzymsko-Katolickie w Ameryce. This was one of the first fraternal organizations in America. This headquarters was a center for people to get together, to complain, to reminisce, to have a dance, to have a banquet, to have a convention, and of course, a concert, a lecture, and theatrical performance. For organizations of that size, it was not unusual that they would have these kinds of theatrical facilities in their headquarters. Just down the street, we have the Polish Women's Alliance. Beautiful auditorium on the second stage. Grand piano, the whole thing. Down the street on Ashland, of course, just the building remains, but you had the Polish Falcons. The same thing, it was a huge building that could accommodate their members and other people for patriotic events, for small theatrical plays. However, the center of Polish cultural life, in fact, every aspect of it, religious life, political life, spiritual, recreational, was the parish. And let us walk over to the exhibit of Polish past in Chicago, and we'll pick up that story there. And so, as you see, along Milwaukee Avenue, as we call the Milwaukee Avenue corridor, you have all these Polish churches. In fact, I kid around that when you pick up a rock and throw, you're going to hit a bell tower every time. Saint Stan's Kostka, Świętego Stanisława Kostki, was the first parish. It was founded in 1857, so it's been around for a long time. Of course, the building that exists now is the second building because the parish grew. Imagine a parish that has 40,000, hold on to something, 40,000 parishioners. Unthinkable. And so the parish, St. Stan's, answered, as I said before, all your needs. Your spiritual, political, recreational, social needs. In fact, I suppose you didn't have to go far to shop for a husband because there was quite a few gentlemen to choose from. The first theater spectacle event that is recorded in our Polish history in Chicago goes back to St. Stanislaus Kostka to 1891 for the 100th anniversary of the May 3rd Constitution. In fact, the play was written by one of our local playwrights, Zachajkiewicz. The title was Jasna Góra, czyli Obrona Częstochowy. Of course, it was based on Sienkiewicz's the trilogy Potop. And since I'm talking about Sienkiewicz, he was a frequent visitor here, and he was also another frequent visitor was Helena Modrzejewska, the pride and joy of Polonia here in America. She was a contemporary as well as in competition with Sarah Bernhardt. And in fact, she performed on the stage at St. Stanislaus Kostka in the play Chłopi Arystokraci. And then Zachajkiewicz was so taken up with her that he wrote a special play for her, Królowa Jadwiga. I have a pair of shoes here that belong to Helena Modrzejewska because in our collection at the museum, we have 3 or 4 of her dresses, including the dress that she played Maria Stuart, several pairs of shoes, and other props, whether it were personal items or items from her theatrical performance. The parochial literary, as they were called, literary and dramatic circles were quite ambitious. Maybe because, first of all, they had musicians, they had playwrights in their community, and they had a lot of young people who were willing to perform. So in a play like Jasna Góra, Obrona Częstochowy, you need a half an army, a battalion on stage. They had it. And another thing is that they were quite ambitious in their titles. Obrona Częstochowy, Barbara Radziwiłłówna, Mazepa, Zaczarowane koło. Some of the classics, Maria Stuart, classics of Polish literature. Besides that, we had quite a few of local Chicago playwrights that filled in the smaller venues. And so, little interesting thing that this couple here seems to have been the stars of the Stanisławowo stage, because this couple appears oftentimes in different photographs. Unfortunately, the photographs are not signed. So, first of all, we don't know what the play is. Of course, these we do know because they are signed. But the sad thing is that we don't know who those actors were. And these parochial theater dramatic circles went on for a very long time. They even outlived the Polish professional theater that existed here in the years between World War I. Why don't we go over to the other side, and I'll show you some more works of our local playwrights. You know, when our great-grandparents, or in my case, my paternal grandparents, when they came here, they went into all sorts of businesses, whether it was the baking business, the meat business, the shoemaking business, but one of the best businesses to be in at that time was the printing business and the music business. I mentioned that those parochial theater groups put on big patriotic plays of Polish history and literature, while other groups, in fact, even those parochial groups, because material was rare, had a staff, let's call them, of playwrights here in Chicago. And those plays were a genre in themselves. They were one-act plays with music, an operetta, one-act operetta, two-act operetta, three-act operetta, or there was a little village kind of subject matter with dances and songs. But some of those songs and some of those plays must have been so popular that the printing business, Mr. Dyniewicz, would publish all these plays, and Mr. Sajewski would publish all the music. So, you know, he made some money, he made some money. But they were very, they were intended, I think, mainly for children, school children, with big morals. Don't do unto others what you would not want them to do unto you. Because remember, our Polonia came from rural Poland. Many of these people that came to those parish theater halls, or even to a hall like this, never were in a theater in the old country, back home. So this was something new for them. Another thing is that we, at least some people, and I suppose it's even true today, the character that you play on stage is carried over into real life. So if you played a nasty girl on stage, when you went home after the spectacle, you may have rocks thrown at you, because there was this correlation between actor and person and character that you played. So that is why most of these plays were really, you know, be good. Otherwise, God is going to punish you. Whatever performances they did, the monies from those performances went to good causes. Because these groups, because of the church and the group, lasted for quite some years, they also had celebrations of their 10th anniversary or 20th anniversary. And in those programs, they would list the shows that they put on, how much money they earned, and where did those funds go. And when it comes to these independent dramatic circles, they went, especially after World War I and after 1920, they went to orphanages in Poland, to schools in Poland, and so on and so forth. Mr. Dyniewicz, he's the man who invented the printing shop, not the press. This man printed everything. Songbooks, prayer books, newspapers, cookbooks, plays, the whole thing. Thanks to these gentlemen, Dyniewicz, Sajewski, Antoniak, Zachajkiewicz, Machtel, and so on and so forth, these gentlemen really enriched, brought a lot of, I think, joy, culture, to the Polish community. Because mind you, the movies were not around yet. The TV wasn't, nobody even thought of that. And of course you have the language barrier. And so where were these people to go for any kind of entertainment or recreation? And it was those theater groups that made it possible. The Polish Jew also played an important part on stage. Most of the time, he was stereotyped, but oftentimes, he was also presented as a patriotic Pole. And you have quite a few plays written. We talked about Barbara Radziwiłłówna, Jasna Góra, patriotic, building up the Polish spirit. Well, I think my colleague talked to you about Cud nad Wisłą. And these playwrights did remember those events and presented some form of it on stage. They put on Wesele Wyspiańskiego. They put on the opera La Bohème. The stage, the decorations were painted drops. And so they looked very much alike. You have a door, two windows. You've got a door and one window, because there was some kind of a prop that was put over it. Another interesting thing is costumes, especially when the play dealt with Polish subjects. When you're talking about Obrona Częstochowy, or you're talking about Wesele, where you have to have authentic folk garb, how do you come about it? Well, these folks were quite inventive. And so you have costumes like this. I call it a la Highlander, Góralski, because the original didn't come with them. Maybe they were too poor to have one, actually, because those things were heavy, required a lot of work and things like this. And same thing with the ladies' dress. In fact, this is funny, because for the longest time, America's Polonia thought that this was the real Kraków dress. The white skirt with the colorful ribbons, and of course, the embroidery. I mean, Obviously, there were a lot of sequences and beads to be bought here in Chicago, but far from the original. But if you look at photographs of Polish May 3rd parades that we've had here in Chicago for the last 100-some years, if you look through the photographs going up to the 60s, you will still find little girls and not so little girls walking in skirts, white skirts with those ribbons. It was, it's quite a, I don't know how to say it, but it is something that really identifies us Poles and Polish Americans. It's like with traditions, every generation adds on or takes something away. You may try to do it like your mother did it, but because of your kids, they don't like this, your husband is whatever Chinese and he doesn't like pierogi or something, you're gonna have to put something in there. And so things change, things are added on. And in time, it becomes tradition because that's the way your daughter will say, well, Mama did it this way. And her daughter will, say, yeah, I think my grandma did it, but my mother does it this way. Things change or reverse. And so this is an example of it, how things are changed, take up like time shifters. In the beginning of the 20th century, and then you're going into the 20s, there was a boom when it came to theater, musicals, the whole shebang. And so out on the East Coast, you had a lot of shops that made costumes all size, one size fits all, so to speak. And here we have an example of a costume that is in our collection, a blouse, looks very much like a folk dress, and yet it's made in New York on 114th Street. Now, I gave you just a little bit of a touch of what the early theater was like in Chicago. But mind you, there was a time when there was professional theater in Chicago. There were 14 professional theaters, but that story we are going to leave for another time when you come and visit again.